everybody! In this episode, we're going to look at the life of Joseph, one of the most remarkable stories in the Bible. We'll see how he went from great heights to terrible deaths, and ultimately back again. And if you stick around to the end, you'll find out why Joseph is so significant for Christians today. Let's get into it. Number 1. Favorite son. From the time he was born, Joseph was Jacob's favorite son, and when he was still very young, Jacob made him a special gift, a colorful coat. In those days, coats were not just for warmth, but also a symbol of authority and honor within a family. So when Joseph wore this coat, it was a clear sign that he was Jacob's favorite. This caused some tension with his brothers, who saw it as favoritism. Number 2. Prophetic dreams. When Joseph was a teenager, he had the prophetic dreams, and in these dreams, his family bowed down to him in submission. Now, it's important to note that these weren't dreams about the future. They were symbolic representations of what would happen in reality. But nevertheless, they caused his brothers to become even more jealous because they interpreted the dreams as a form of boasting. And Joseph didn't help matters when he shared them with his brothers. He probably thought it was just telling them what God had shown him, but they hated it. Number 3. Betrayal. Eventually, Joseph's brothers couldn't take it anymore. When he told them another dream that seemed to mock them, they plotted to kill him. But then Judah suggested they sell him into slavery instead. So while Joseph was out tending his father's sheep, his brothers took off his colorful coat, stripped him of his dignity, and sold him to some passing traders who took him to Egypt. Then, wanting to hide their crime from their father, they dipped a coat in goat's blood and brought it to Jacob, pretending to be distraught. And it worked. Jacob grieved over Joseph's supposed death and mourned for him. Number 4. Faithful in Potiphar's house. Joseph ended up in the house of an important official named Potiphar. For a while, things went well for him. He became Potiphar's favorite servant and was put in charge of his household. And this shows us something important about Joseph's character. Even though he had been betrayed and sold by his own family, he didn't hold on to bitterness or hate. Instead, he chose faithfulness. He gave his best wherever he was, which caused Potiphar to trust him and entrust him with his affairs. Number 5. Prison trial. But unfortunately, trouble soon found Joseph again when Potiphar's wife accused him of trying to touch her. And even though he was innocent, Joseph was thrown into prison. It was a place filled with all kinds of people who had been wrongly accused and sentenced. For example, there were 2 prisoners, a baker and a wine steward, who had fallen out of Pharaoh's favor. And like Joseph, they were stuck in prison without any hope of release. Number 6. Dreams in prison. One day, both prisoners had a dream, and they asked Joseph to interpret them. And this wasn't easy. The dreams were strange and cryptic, and Joseph needed to figure out what they meant. But after some thought, he was able to explain them. The baker's dream was bad, and Joseph predicted that he would be put to death. But the wine steward's dream was hopeful, and Joseph said that he would be released from prison and go back to Pharaoh's court. And amazingly, that's exactly what happened. 2 days later, the king threw a huge party and invited all the nobles and officials to celebrate. And at the party, Pharaoh had the dreams that no one could explain. So word got around that the prisoner who interpreted dreams was being held in the jailhouse. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and upon hearing his explanation of the dreams, Pharaoh was impressed. And let's just say he liked Joseph a lot. He made him a grand feast and put a ring on his hand and garments of fine linen. He then announced to everyone, "Can you find anyone like him who can direct the king's affairs and take charge of all these visions?" But of course, the answer was no one else could do what Joseph did. Number 7. Rise to power. So Pharaoh made Joseph the second in command over all of Egypt, putting him in charge of everything that came into or went out of the country. Then he gave Joseph a new name, Zaphnath-Paneah, which means the revealer of secrets. And he married Joseph off to the daughter of a priest named Asenath. Things were really looking up for Joseph, But his troubles were far from over, because not long after, his old brothers showed up in Egypt asking for food. They had no idea that Joseph was now second in command, and they had come to buy grain during the famine. But little did they know that Joseph was the one in charge of selling it. Number 8. Famine. You see, Pharaoh had heard Joseph's interpretation of his dreams that there would be 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. So to prepare, he appointed Joseph to oversee the storing of grain during the good years, so that way they could have enough to feed the people during the bad years. And that's what Joseph was doing when he met his brothers. At first, they had no idea that it was him. They were too caught up in their own guilt and fear, thinking that they would be punished for coming to Egypt. But Joseph tested them to see if they had changed their ways. And though they had no idea what they were doing, eventually Joseph revealed his true identity to them. Number 9. Forgiveness. Now, you might think that Joseph would have been angry and wanted revenge against his brothers for what they did to him. And actually, he could have easily done this. He had the power and authority to punish them, maybe even throw them in prison. But instead, he forgave them. He realized that they acted out of jealousy and pride, not hatred, and he knew that God was in control of his destiny. Joseph was able to rise above his feelings of betrayal and reunite with his father, Jacob. In fact, he brought Jacob to live in Egypt where he and all his family could thrive and be taken care of. Number 10. Legacy of Providence. Before Jacob died, he blessed all his sons, including Joseph's sons. And in that blessing, he prophesied that though Joseph's brothers meant harm, God used it for good to preserve many lives. This passage shows us how God works through our circumstances to accomplish his purposes. Even though Joseph experienced incredible highs and devastating lows, in the end, he learned to submit to God's will. And as a result, many people's lives were saved. Now, why is the story of Joseph so important for Christians today? Well, for one, it shows us how quickly things can change in life. Joseph went from being a happy teenager to living in misery, all because of his brother's actions. It reminds us not to be proud and boastful, but to stay humble no matter what. Joseph could have easily been bitter and resentful towards his family and others, but he chose forgiveness, and that gives us hope to forgive those who have hurt us. Plus, the story of Joseph reminds us that God is in control of history. He has a plan and he'll accomplish it, even when it seems like everything is falling apart. So what do you think? What is your favorite part of the story of Joseph? Leave a comment below. Also, check out our other videos. Thanks for watching.